All right, so in this video, we're going to create our very first drawing. So you want to make sure that you're in the right, you've activated the right component. So I want to create my drawing in this component number 1. So I'm going to come up here and create a sketch. Now the very first thing that this does is this kind of gives us this three-dimensional plane thing. And notice as I'm moving this around on screen, notice what's happening over here in this block. So I've got front, or that's right. If I flip there, I'm in my front. If I flip, I'm on top. So the very first thing you got to do, so this is if I want to do a top view, this is if I want to do a front view, this is if I want to do a side view. So the first thing it's saying is, okay, what direction, where do you want to draw from? And so what I like to do is I generally do a top view, meaning if you think about this, I'm going to draw flat on a tabletop, right? And then I'm going to pull up my drawing to 3D from the tabletop, okay? So there's a couple, it's hard to get the orientation down to sort of figure this out. And the way that I'm moving on screen is I'm using the shift button, and I am pressing that middle mouse button, and when I do that, you can see that I'm getting it like that. My cursor changes to the circling universe thing, and by holding shift and clicking on that middle mouse button, I can then move the universe around. That takes a little bit of getting used to. So what I will tell you is up here, let's say things get totally crazy out of whack, all right? You don't even know where you are right now. If you come back up here and hit home, it will give you the upper sort of corner view. It'll still give you all 3 views, but you're in this sort of upper corner view, and it's highlighted there in kind of gray right there, right? So what I would do is the easiest thing to do is you say, I want from top, then I would just go up here, click the top button. You now know the only square you can touch is top. You click that square, and when I click the square, you're going to see a lot of things change. You're going to see this menu bar change, and you're going to see something pop up here on the right-hand side. So let me click this, and I've now told it that I want to do a drawing, and I want to do it on the top view. Okay? Now, as promised, let's talk about what just happened. The first thing that happened is under my component, the system automatically created something called a sketch. It created sketch number 2. I had originally created another one, it deleted it, so it auto-named it number 2. Normally the first sketch would be number 1. It had then changed. These are like Windows, like Microsoft Office. This changes to what you can see, what you can do, right? And notice that I'm in the sketch sub-menu. I can go solids. I can go, so I was in surface, solids. I click create sketch, and it brought me to the sketch menu. All right? And here are my creation tools. There's a bunch of tools where I use to create. Then once I've created something, these are my tools to modify. And then once I've done that, I'll talk about constraints in a second in a different video. But that's basically how you can make sure things touch properly, or they're perpendicular, or when you're free drawing, you're free drawing. But when you want to do it mathematically, you use constraints to make sure things don't change when you change dimensions and stuff in your drawings, okay? Then you've got inspect. You can insert a picture if we were trying to create against a picture. You have selection tools, and then you have finish sketch. On the right-hand side, I have my sketch palette. So these are some constraints, and depending on what tools I'm using to draw with, this palette changes and only gives me the available options. The other thing that you have here is at any moment you can use the right mouse button and you can get a contextual menu. So what I did was I right-clicked, and then I get my contextual menu. If I move the mouse, I can go any one of these directions and select these things, or I can go into the menu. So it all depends on how you work. I don't tend to use this menu system very well. I tend to click because I'm a visual person, but a lot of people use that menu. And then you can also do custom shortcuts too. So this is like, when you live 12 hours a day, you can modify the hell out of this thing. But let's do something simple. Let's draw a box. So what I have here is I've got a 2-point rectangle, and I got 2 different boxes. And if I come in here, if I want to come under rectangles, I've got 3 different rectangle choices. 2 of them happen to be up on this menu bar. Your menu bar is not going to look exactly like my menu bar because I've added some things that I use, some tools that I use a lot. But let's just make a 1" by 1" box, okay? So the easiest, I'm going to show you the 2 simplest box tools. This is a 2-point. You start here, and then you come down here. But notice that's not 1" by 1", right? That was 50, this is going to be in millimeters. It was 25 millimeters by 50 millimeters. So if I want to create something from a point, I'm going to use a center point. So let's say I want to start at the origin and I want to create a box. So I clicked once and I'm now going to drag, and you see how it free. So it free as I'm dragging the numbers. I can't really show you on screen, but see that number in blue? It's changing as I drag. Now the other thing I can do is I can type in numbers. So the number that's highlighted in blue, if I wanted it to be 50 millimeters, right, I could type in 15. And then if I hit tab, I'll go to the next one, 15. So that's a really good way and then if I hit enter right here, it'll give me a 50 by 50 millimeter box. Okay. Another way of doing it is just drawing and then coming back later and giving it a dimension. So I want to show you that because it's just sort of a trick. So I just, depending on if I select and drag from the upper left to the lower right, so I'm going to select this and delete this. So I can do that a couple different ways. If you select from this side and I only select part of it, I'm going to get the whole thing. If I select from this side and only select part of it, I should only get what was inside the box. And this is kind of a concept that comes from Photoshop, but from drawing applications. So if you start from the right-hand side and go left, when you do your selection, anything that touches that box in whole is going to get selected. So if I want to get both that box and that box, I can just come in here real quickly and do that. But if I were to try to do the same thing and clicking and dragging from the left-hand side to the right, and I click that. So let me just do that. I may only get 1 point because the point is the thing. So a box is 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the lines in between 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, and then you have this little X thing that gives you a little bit of reference. But it's really a box is 4 points and 4 lines, right? So if I'm going to drag from left, everything that I drag has to be included. So there I got that one, but I also got the points on this box. Does that make sense? So if you want to drag everything and just delete everything, you can either grab the whole thing and delete it, or you can delete the sketch by right-clicking on it and deleting the sketch, and then starting a new sketch. But for this sake, we'll just do. Oh, one other thing I want to point out. Remember when I free drew this? You see how this one's dimensioned out 50 by 50, and because I typed it in, it gave me the dimensions. When I free drew this, it didn't give me the dimensions. Only till you go back and add dimensions. So, do you get the dimensions? So add another dimension. Now, what's cool about this is if I want to change this dimension and make it taller, I'm going to make it 35. Well, now watch what happens. Boom. So it dimensioned. I thought I was dimensioning this box. It did not. I was dimensioning that line to that line, and see how it moved it up? So let's dimension from here to here. Now, let's say I want to make this 30. Oops, 60. Go back to 30. 30. Boom. So it anchored from up here because that's where I started the drawing. So that was my anchor point. And so when I moved it moved the drawing. I mean, there's a whole sort of language to how all this stuff moves and whatever. But it's very interesting. What you click on, you may not know. You need to be very precise about what you click on. Otherwise, if I wanted this to be 30, if I wanted this to be 35 and I typed in the wrong spot, look how it's not 35 anymore. It's 30 because I added 30 over here, but made that 35. So you can get confused pretty easily. All right, I think I'm probably confusing you now. Okay, so it still thinks. So you look at my little arrow now has that little dimension thing. I need to escape out of. I need to hit the escape key to get out of the dimension mode. So now I'm out of the dimension mode, right? So it de-highlighted that, and now we're in select mode. So I'm gonna select everything and delete. Okay. The other thing that's very interesting about parametric programs is this is all about CAD programs in general. Is measurement is theoretical. So I'm going to come in here and we're going to do a 1-inch square box. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab 1 inch. Even though this says millimeters, I'm going to type in 1 and then I'm going to do inch. And then I'm going to type in 1 and then I'm going to do inch. Okay? And that is 1 inch by 1 inch. So that is imperial measurements inside of a metric environment. So they just did the conversion for me. Now the other thing that's really cool about this, I can click on this and change it. Right? So we can go to 2 inches. Remember how I did that, right? But what's other cool is I can do math. So I can go 2 inches divided by 1 And that gives me, I'm sorry, I meant to do 2 inches divided by 2. If I do 2 inches divided by 2, I'm back to 1 inch. So you see, you can start doing math. And this becomes super important if you're designing things like super important. But most of the time, you just got your ruler out and you're just trying to get everything measured up and kind of get it figured out. So let's just delete all that out. We're just going to go 1 inch for simple. Okay, so I've got my 1 inch and 1 inch box, but it's not a three-dimensional object. So I'm going to click finish. And what you're going to see here is you're going to see this little flat thing. It's not a box anymore. I mean, it's not a box yet. We got to extrude it, right? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use something called press pull extrude, right? So I clicked on it. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me go back. So it's not selected. I'm going to hit extrude. Oh, because it's literally the only thing I have on there, it selected it. Normally, if you have 20 drawings, it wouldn't select it. You'd have to hit extrude and then you'd have to select it. So you have to select the drawing part that you want to extrude. So I can free extrude this like we did before. So there's a three-dimensional object, right? But if I do it, it's in millimeters, it's not in inches. So I got to come back here and hit 1 inch. And now I have a 1 inch by 1 inch cube. And you can see that. There's your 1 inch by 1 inch cube. All right. Now let's say we wanted to print that out, right? So let me show you what just happened. So when I went from a sketch and I hit the extrude button, I told the program I wanted to create a 3D model. So now you see that under our components we have bodies. So I'm gonna bring that down. I've got my body. So this is my body, and I can turn that off. I can turn on and off my body. When I do that, I still see the sketch. Sometimes I may want to turn off the sketches. Sometimes I want to turn different things. So if you're doing one object, no problem. If you're doing stacks of 30 objects, you got to turn stuff on and off. It becomes really complicated. Or you may do what you would normally do is put a lot of those objects in different components. You just turn the components on and off. So I can turn this whole component off here too. So this seems like I'm nitpicking about navigation, but the very first thing you're going to do is get lost, and you're going to figure out, holy shit, where am I? What's going on? And what I will tell you is look over here. That'll tell you where you're at. Whatever is the active component, that'll tell you where you're at. And if stuff goes totally haywire, bring your mouse over here and hit the home button, and then boom, it will bring you back to that same origin point. That's like the oh shit button. Okay, and then you can actually, if you want to click on things, you can navigate from here as well. And like this is a box, you can't really tell, but we can rotate it around as well. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's making a box.